study of man bringing life back to individuals that have succumbed to death has been ongoing for literal centuries. This has involved the following techniques. Resuscitation science, which is what's known in the medical field as being focused on reviving individuals from states of apparent clinical death or severe trauma. Techniques such as cardiopulmonary resuscitation, defibrillation, and advanced life support are central to this study. Cryonics. This is the practice of preserving individuals at extremely low temperatures with the hope that future medical technology will be able to revive them and restore their health. Biological immortality and anti-aging research. This involves studying the aging process to reverse or halt it, potentially leading to a form of life extension or even revival after death. Regenerative medicine, such as stem cell research and tissue engineering, to regrow or repair damaged organs and tissues, which could theoretically be used to revive or sustain life. The evidence I'm about to present to you is unedited, and is the only video from Moscow in 1940 that features the Russian scientist named Sergei Budanenko's auto-injector machine in remastered high definition. The studies he performed with this machine are nothing short of fascinating, as you will see a dog drained of all its blood and literally brought back to life when the machine is implemented. This is accomplished with his auto-injector medical device, which has become what is the precursor to modern life support systems used today in many cardiac surgeries as well as organ transplant procedures. One can't help but wonder what memories, if any, the dog has had from the 10 minutes he's been clinically dead.
I should like to tell you that I have seen some of the experiments shown in this film actually carried out at the All-Russian Physiological Congress. As you can imagine, technique is everything. Besides such work as you are about to see, Bryukhanenko shares the credit for the methods of human blood transfusion, which were first developed in the Soviet Union and are now practiced in this country, which have saved so many lives during the war. What enabled Soviet scientists to solve this problem? Long ago, science established the fact that animal organs and tissues, isolated from the whole organism, can be maintained in a living state. But in order to achieve this, special artificial conditions must be created. Isolated organs can be brought to life even though they've been removed from the animal's corpse some time after death. Here's a dog's heart. It can function as well in artificial conditions as in a living organism, and for this purpose, blood is introduced into the cardiac vessels. The isolated heart beats just as it did a few hours previously in the living dog. The following experiment is conducted on lungs taken from an animal. Bellows distend the lungs and fill them with air. The venous blood is forced into the lungs by the action of the pump. The dark venous blood passes through this tube. In the lungs, it takes up oxygen and becomes arterial blood. The isolated lungs breathe, producing the same chemical changes as in the living animal. An animal's head can also live in the isolated condition. Here is the plan of the experiment. The arterial pump takes arterial blood from the reservoir to the head, while the venous pump drains off the venous blood. The blood is arterialized in the reservoir, where there is a steady flow of oxygen. The artificial blood circulation ensures the metabolism necessary for the life of the head. The isolated head lives on for hours and reacts to external stimuli. The isolated head even reacts to light and to sound. The revival of individual organs enabled scientists to proceed to experiment on reviving the whole organism. The revival of the whole organism can be achieved with the help of an apparatus called the autojector. The autojector carries out the functions of the heart and lungs. As we know, the heart, by its rhythmical contractions, supplies the body with arterial blood rich in oxygen. After losing its oxygen, the blood returns to the heart through the veins. From them, it flows into the lungs, whence with a fresh supply of oxygen it returns to the heart, and thence flows into the arteries of the organism. The autojector works on the same principle. The apparatus includes a system of pumps for supplying blood and drawing it off. The arterial pump supplies the organism with arterial blood. When the blood has given up its oxygen, the venous pump draws it back into the reservoir. Here, just as in the lungs, it's enriched with oxygen and returns into the organism. The blood passing into the arteries of the body ensures the necessary metabolism. In this way, the autojector can perform the work of both the heart and lungs. We begin the experiment of revival. The experiment is carried out on a dog. A substance which prevents clotting is introduced into the animal's blood. The dog is under an anesthetic. It doesn't feel pain. No interruption of the animal's normal functions has yet occurred. The dog reacts to touch. Its pupils are normal. A special apparatus, the chymograph, registers the breathing and the function of the dog's heart. The pulse and breathing are normal. The experiment begins. All the blood is drained off through the carotid artery. The heart has stopped. This is one of the animal's last gasps. This is the final breath. The dog is dead. Without operative interference, death would be final, as the disintegration of the body cells would gradually set in. The autojector is being attached before starting the revival. The arterial pump is connected with the artery. The venous pump is connected with the vein. Ten minutes have elapsed since the animal died. The blood removed from the animal is pumped back into its vessels by the autojector. The autojector ensures a normal blood circulation in the organism, replacing the action of the dead heart and lungs. The artificial blood circulation gradually induces the heart to start beating again. The heart's action begins to be normal. First sign. The respiration is gradually restored. The dog breathes more normally and evenly. The animal's condition approaches normal. We can now disconnect the autojector and leave the organism of the dog to maintain life with its own resources. The dog soon shakes off the effects of the anesthetic. The dog is still weak and can't move. After 10 to 12 days, the dog returns to its normal state. After the experiment, dogs live for years, they grow, they put on weight, and have families. For a number of years now, 3 dogs have been under observation in the Voronezh Medical Institute. after being revived by artificial blood circulation. This dog, Bunny, was revived in 1939 after having been dead for 8 minutes. Black Ears is the offspring of revived parents. She herself was revived in 1939 after 11.5 minutes of death. Naida was revived in 1938 after 15 minutes of death. These experiments on the revival of dogs have shown that the process has no harmful effect on the animal organism. The question of the revival of animals is one of the most interesting problems in physiology today. Experiments on revival have added to the valuable store of our knowledge of experimental medicine.
A black hole which corresponds in mass to 2 billion suns. The American exobiologist Carl Sagan claims that the uniqueness of human beings is a great delusion, and that we are equally mistaken to think that our galaxy is in some way exceptional. Hundreds of billions of such galaxies probably exist. Over the past decades, science has launched several projects based on the transmission and detection of radio signals for contacting extraterrestrial civilizations. Many scientists, however, consider this quite unnecessary, as they themselves have already been in contact with alien forms of life. One of them was the world-famous brain researcher Dr. John Lilly, who experienced the power of an unknown civilization in a very tangible way when he was on his way to Los Angeles in 1974. As his plane was approaching the airport, a message flashed through his head, saying that the sender of the message would cause, in 30 seconds, a breakdown in all electrical systems at the airport, and that the plane would have to land at another airport. Soon after this, the passengers on the plane heard the pilot announce that for some unknown reason, the airport's electrical systems had failed, and the plane would be diverted to another airport. Similarly, Dr. John Klimo has been in contact with other forms of life. In his investigations, he's tried to approach them through altered states of consciousness.
We've heard of the phrase, life is like a dream, and our spiritual teachers say that we are about the business these days, these crucial times of waking from a dream into a kind of awakeness that we've heard about or have heard prophesied or hoped for in our dreams, so to speak, would come true. If you know the notion of a lucid dream, being aware of becoming aware in the dream that you're dreaming, but not awakening from the dream, but now having like normal waking consciousness within the dream, that's called lucid dreaming. I am interested as a researcher in the analogy between regular dreaming and lucid dreaming and regular awakeness, which most of our human population is in the state of in normal awakeness, what my psychologist friend Charles Tart calls the consensus trance. He believes that daily waking consensus reality that we all share and think is objectively real is really like a trance state. We're in like a hypnotic state that we've done to each other from birth. And how do you awaken from that trance? That questions, for me, it throws me into the area, another area of my interest, which is consciousness studies. Because there are many levels of consciousness. There are many altered states of consciousness. And the consciousness that most of us fellow human beings share when we're awake is a very limited, constrained, blinded state of consciousness that only allows the experience of certain things. If you alter that baseline normal waking consciousness and the whole multidimensional psychoenergetic system that it is part of, when you alter that whole psychoenergetic system, that consciousness state, it allows you to perceive, interact with, and affect, and receive information from other levels of reality. My research leads me to believe that we as a human species on this planet are evolving in consciousness, that our individual psychoenergetic systems, the complex, superimposed, multi-leveled energy systems that we each are, not just our physical bodies, but only subtler levels our science is only beginning to fathom, we're going to find survival of physical death more apparent to us, meaning that those who die physically are going to more readily be able to communicate back and forth with those of us still in physical bodies. This is within our lifetime. We will have more and more of these experiences. Similarly, contact with extraterrestrials, as we call them, and those who live not only on other planets, but other planets on other dimensions, extra-dimensionals. Because it's a house of many mansions, it's a tremendous new Copernican revolution we're going through, within which we're realizing we're not alone.
Some 100,000 years ago, an outer layer called the cortex began to form around the human brain. The cortex allows human beings to think, to reflect and examine things, to be individuals. The cortex is estimated to have been in its present form for about 40,000 years. In the past, spirits were thought to use dreams to guide people. For this reason, our ancient forefathers gave such great significance to dreams. For the indigenous peoples of North America, contact with the gods and the supernatural world is part of everyday life, and many learn at an early age to direct their lives with the help of dreams. When the peoples of the ancient world analyzed their dreams, they looked for their fate in the dreams and interpreted their messages with resignation. The Old and the New Testaments contain many examples of dreams and how they affected people's thinking and actions. Jacob dreamed that he saw a ladder reaching up into heaven, a stairway for the angels of God to go up and come down. However, it was Jacob's son Joseph who was one of the most famous visionaries and interpreters of dreams. Only he was able to interpret correctly Pharaoh's dreams of the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. Also, Joseph's own dreams were prophetic. Two of the best known foretold of his future position of power as regent to the Pharaoh. Psychologists consider dreams as almost invisible roots of man's conscious thoughts. Even ordinary objects and ideas may acquire a powerful significance and seriously startle people. Nightmares are often disguised warnings which seek to turn our conscious attention to a hidden threat. Therefore, they may foretell of certain situations long before the events actually take place. These cases are not necessarily a miracle or a premonition, only an active awareness of the subconscious. Dreams may also act as a path to the ultimate source of creation, and even refer to somewhere beyond our subconscious. The composer Franz Schubert left a letter, which was not to be opened until 50 years after his death. In the letter, he says, enigmatically, "None of my compositions is my own work. I have received them all from the world of spirits through dreams." Sigmund Freud's understanding of dreams was that they are disguised thoughts and emotions from the unconscious mind, while Jung insisted that their task is to subtly restore balance to our psyche. How then do dreams originate?
Uni syntyy siten, että ihmisellä on tietty tunnelma. Tähän tunnevireeseen kytkeytyy juuri siihen sopivat kuva-aineistot. Saattaa myös tulla niin ikäviä asioita, että ihminen torjuu kuva-aineiston vielä tarkemmin, syntyy paradoksaalinen uni, jossa unen tunnelma ja unen kuvaasu tuntuvatkin olevan ristiriidassa. Unia synnyttävät tekijät ovat siis moninaiset. Ihmisen toiveet ja pelot saattavat toteutua unissa. Edellisten päivien tapahtumat, hyvinkin vanhat tapahtumat varhaislapsuudesta, jota emme tietoisesti muista, saattavat tulla unissa esiin. Jos ihminen on humalatilassa ja nukahtaa, niin tämä unipiikki ei tavallaan nouse tähän uniputkeen. Jos humalatila on jatkunut muutamia vuorokausia, tämä aivoaines ei pääse purkautumaan ulos kuvallisesti. Purkautuminen alkaa tapahtua päivätajunnassa, syntyy delirium, juoppohulluus, ihminen alkaa nähdä näitä samoja kuvia päivällä. Sama ilmiö on nähty muun muassa haaksirikkoisilla, jotka ovat ajelehtineet monta vuorokautta meressä, eivätkä ole voineet nukkua. Heidän toiveensa alkaa toteutua. He alkavat nähdä, kuulla helikopterin äänen, he ovat pelastettuja ja niin edelleen. Jos ihmisen ego on murtunut jostain muusta syystä, syntyy siis skitsofrenia. Myöskin skitsofrenia tuottaa päivätajunnassa kuvia. Syntyy enemmän tai vähemmän harhaisia kuvasisältöjä. Ihminen saattaa kokea olevansa tekemisessä korkeiden jumalolentojen ja demonien kanssa. Hän saattaa esiintyä Jumalan viestin, henkimaailman viestin välittäjänä. Hän ei välttämättä lainkaan itse ymmärrä, että kuvat tulevat hänestä itsestään, äänet tulevat hänestä itsestään. Tällä en tietenkään pyri lainkaan väittämään sitä, että korkeatasoista mediumismisuutta sinänsä ei olisi olemassa. On kuitenkin nähty usein, että on kysymyksessä häiriintyneitäkin ihmisiä.
Anita dreamt that she lived in a toilet with a mirror covering an entire wall. She stood naked in front of the mirror and looked at herself. She had long hair hanging down to her lower back, like Botticelli's Venus, and a man's testicles. She wondered how could she have testicles as she was a woman. Anita dreamt that she was going to a dance at her old school. Her girlfriend, Karina, was wearing a clerical cassock and was on her way to preach at a religious meeting. On their way, the two women made a diversion into a graveyard. It was dark, although the main path was lit. Karina wanted to make love to Anita beside the stone wall. The two women lay together, and Anita squeezed Karina's breasts, which fitted her hand perfectly. Later, Anita asked if Karina had had an orgasm. Karina admitted she had, although only a small one. A light shone on Karina's white lower body. For the past 30 years, the Finnish writer Anita Konka has written down her dreams. She has also studied old books of dreams and psychoanalytical and mythocritical interpretations of dreams. Konka's dream fantasies are incredible adventure stories, full of suspense, sex and violence. According to Konka, dreams are related to and reflect the dreamer's life situation. But dreams are also enjoyable, a nightly adventure and entertainment series with the dreamer as scriptwriter, director and actor.
Mä muistan itse hyvin vähän aikaa sitten mä näin hämähäkistä unta. Se oli myrkyllinen hämähäkki. Mä pysähdyin miettimään, heräsin tietenkin, että nyt tässä tulee unen viesti ja uni haluaa mulle jotain tietoa itsestäni. Mietin, mitä hämähäkki voi tarkoittaa. Se on monta tarkoitusta. Se on niin kuin luovuuden symboli, mutta se on myös kuoleman symboli, jossa on ristilukki. Ja vanhat unikirjat sanoo, että se tuo rahaa ja onnea, koska vanhoissa unikirjoissa aina kaikki tapahtuu päinvastoin. Mutta mä otin tämän asian kyllä psykologisesti ja mietin, että hämähäkki, sehän kietoo verkkoja. Ja mitä mä olen nyt tekemässä ihmissuhteessani? Ja mulle tuli sellainen, että mä yritän kietoa verkkoa erään tietyn ihmisen ympäri. Siis minä olen se hämähäkki, jolloin mä sain tietoa itsestä, että mä olen nyt hyvin mustasukkainen ja mun pitäisi muuttaa käyttäytymistä ja asennetta. Siis tällaista tietoa unista saa paljon ja tämä on hyvin hyödyllistä tietoa mun mielestä. Mä olen oppinut kyllä paljon myös käsittelemään ihmissuhteita, kun mä oon pysähtynyt miettimään, että mitä tämä uni merkitsee. Mutta mä oon sitten sitä mieltä, että tämä meidän kulttuuri, jos me ei oltaisi nähty lentounia, me ei oltaisi ruvettu keksimään koskaan lentokonetta, jos me ei oltaisi nähty vedenalaisia unia, me ei oltaisi keksitty näitä sukellusveneitä ja miten mennään veden alle. Siis, että kaikki alkaa oikeastaan tästä alitajunnasta, alitajunnan kuvista ja visioista ja toteutuu sitten, materialisoituu. Me toteutetaan meidän unemme. Sillä tavoin unet ja kulttuuri on koko ajan toistensa kanssa tekemisissä, mutta myös unet voi vaikuttaa politiikkaankin. Aika dramaattinen tutkimus tästä, miten yhteiskunta vaikuttaa unimaailmaan, on se, vuonna 1933 amerikkalainen tutkijanainen rupesi keräämään juutalaisten unia Saksassa. Ja hän keräsi niitä vuoteen 1938, eli 5 vuoden ajan. Ja sinä ajanjaksona Hitler pääsi vaikuttamaan niin paljon, että näiden juutalaisten unet muuttuvat yhä ahdistuneemmiksi. Ne eivät nähneet enää kompensaatiounia, eli näitä, joissa ahdistava tilanne muuttuu kauniiksi, koska ihminen tarvitsee toivoa pystyäkseen elämään. Siis kaikki toivo meni unista pois ja loppujen lopuksi ne eivät enää nähneet unia, koska niillä ei ollut mitään mahdollisuutta selviytyä tästä tilanteesta. Että tällä tavoin 3. valtakunta pääsi sensuroimaan koko ihmisten unimaailman.
Kirkista korvasi kuulemaan sitä sanomaa. Hän on varjo ihmisen.
Dreams have an important place in the lives of medially and artistically gifted people. They find it easy to interpret the symbolic language of dreams, and the dreams act as a channel to unseen worlds. Uncommonly often, they have had UFO experiences disguised as dreams, which have later revealed themselves as typical abductions, and which have, almost without exception, proved to have a consequential effect on their lives.
Näen usein unia, jotka toteutuvat konkreettisesti. Eli ne tapahtuvat sellaisena, mitä ne näenkin. Mutta suurin osa kuitenkin unistani ovat symbolisia. Useimmiten uneni toteutuvat noin 6 kuukauden, vuoden sisällä. Yksi tapaus, joka oli hyvin merkittävä, oli sukulaismieheni hirvikolari, jonka näin unena niin, että leijona raateli hänen kasvonsa. Ja näin tapahtuikin sikäli, että hänen kasvonsa olivat aivan verestä punaiset ja niitä jouduttiin kirurgisesti moneen kertaan operoimaan. Myös olen nähnyt luonnonmullistusunia, rotat, minun unissani ainakin merkitsevät kulkutautia tai jotain pahaa tautia. Ja yleensä linnut, mehiläiset, nämä ovat tietäneet sitä, että maailmalla tapahtuu luonnon mullistuksia, katastrofia, tulvia, myrskyjä. Ja onpa sattunut niinkin, että olemme tyttäremme kanssa nähneet samanlaista unta. Ja tätä on sattunut parikin kertaa. Eli heräämme aamulla, olemme hämmästyksissä, kerromme toinen toisillemme, mitä unta näimme, ja totesimme, että se jopa toteutui. Mutta toisaalta otan nämä enneudet varoituksena, opetuksena siitä, että voimme estää ehkä nämä mahdolliset onnettomuudet.
Early studies indicate that about 50% of all unforeseen extrasensory experiences occur during sleep, implying a link between sleep and paranormal phenomena. It was also discovered that such experiences are more common at night than in the daytime. Since the early 1960s, Dr. Montague Ullman has studied the interdependence between dreams and clairvoyance. Dr. Ullman's research and other parapsychological studies over the past decades have shown that sleep also improves a person's sensitivity to receive other paranormal phenomena. Some mediums have, for example, been able to have repeated precognitive dreams on randomly selected subjects. Ullman's research is based on Nathaniel Kleitman's revolutionary discovery that the rapid eye movements of a sleeping person indicate that the sleeper is dreaming. In his investigations, Ullman sent telepathic images of well-known paintings enclosed in envelopes to a person who was sleeping. When the person was found to be dreaming, she was woken up and asked to describe the dream. Finally, outside observers were asked to assess how well the dreams had corresponded with the paintings. The results showed that the probability of the test being successful by accident was at best less than 1 in 1,000.
I think you'd come to the conclusion that as of this time, telepathy, clairvoyance, and precognition, as well as psychokinesis, is fairly well established. People can benefit from their dream life if they do the work necessary to translate the pictures that they produce while they're dreaming into meaningful information about themselves. When we're awake, we are social beings and we have a social facade, and we have very ingenious ways of hiding from others things about ourselves we don't want them to see or we don't want to see.
Shamanism is sometimes known in the Western world as neo-shamanism. In its most original form, shamanism is known among the indigenous peoples of the northern regions, where the community's magical religious life revolves around the shaman. The shamans may have several souls, men 5, women 4. Unlike in the primitive cultures of more southerly latitudes, the northern shamans are not under the influence of spirits, but seek an altered state of consciousness through willpower, during which they travel to extrasensory worlds.
Telepaattisten unien tutkijat ovat päässeet aika mielenkiintoisiin tuloksiin unien osalta. Siellä on esitetty tällaisia olettamuksia, että unissa ihminen on ihan suorassa yhteydessä koko kosmiseen todellisuuteen. Ja voidaan olettaa, että tämä on oikeastaan ihmisyyden varsinainen taso tai se taso, missä ihminen on aidoimmin ihminen, Jumalan kuva. Ja se arkimaailma, jossa me päivisin ollaan, niin tämä on vain tällainen hyvin hämärä varjokuva siitä varsinaista maailmasta, missä ihminen voisi elää. Siis unessahan ihminen oikeastaan kuolee. Siis on ymmärretty, että unet ovat kuoleman kaksoisveli.
In surviving indigenous cultures of Siberia, dreams are a second reality which the shamans enter through rituals. How then do they use the state of altered consciousness?
Shamanismissa on olennaista usko monen sielun olemassaoloon. Ja unissa ja rituaaleissa yksi shamanin sielusta lähtee pois ruumiista ja ottaa toisen olotilan. On mahdollista, että shamanin sielu löytää olotilakseen linnun, jolloin saavutetaan taivaan piiri, lennetään. Toinen mahdollisuus on se, että shamanin sielu on karhussa, taikka sudessa, taikka hirvessä täällä maan päällä ihmisten keskellä. Kolmas vaihtoehto on se, että shamanin sielu on kalassa, jolloin se etsii maan uomenia ja vedenalaista todellisuutta, saivotilaa. Nyt ajatellaan, että rituaalissa shamanin sielu ottaa nämä olomuodot. Mutta toinen mahdollisuus on unet. Unet ovat myös mahdollisia tavallisellekin ihmiselle, ei vain shamanille. Tavallinen ihminen voi saavuttaa unissa jopa samana todellisuuden kuin shamani rituaalissa. Näin ollen sielu voi siis olla ruumiin ulkopuolella, ja hyvin suuri osa shamanisista kokemuksista on näitä out of body, ruumiin ulkopuolella tapahtuvia kokemuksia. Voisi ajatellakin, että pohjoisten kansojen keskuudessa tavattavat unet, joita tänäkin päivänä esiintyy, joita tänäkin päivänä voi kuulla, ja joita kertyy sairaalakertomuksiin, psykiatrin pöytäkirjoihin, kertovat tästä todellisuudesta, unimaailmasta, jonka juuret ovat shamanistiset. Näin ajattelisin, että esimerkiksi pohjoissuomalaisten ja saamelaisten keskuudessa unimaailma on yksi vahva osoitus siitä, että tämän kulttuurin juuret ovat shamanistiset.
Although dreams are of paramount importance in the life of shamans, their contact with nature is of equal importance. Among the Nanai tribe who live on the river Amur, concern for the balance of nature is always present in the thoughts and actions of the shaman. He never digs the earth or breaks the branch off a living tree. Archaeologists claim that shamanism is a phenomenon which is at least 20,000 years old. Shamans were probably the first storytellers, healers, holy men, and magicians, which is why shamanism competes for the title of the oldest profession in the world. In a closed tribal community, all share a belief in the power of the shaman, which clearly intensifies the efficiency of his magic. Shamans either inherit their calling or are selected for it by the extrasensory world. In the latter case, they may fall victim to a sudden and serious illness and recover only by healing themselves, or fall into a trance or a dream, during which the spirits of the dead inform them of their selection. Also, their way of leaving this world is unusual. When they know that their hour has come, they embark on a long trip to bury their drums, in order not to leave anything of themselves on this earth. Usually they find enough time for this, and only a few drums have ever been found. With his drum, the shaman symbolically buries his individuality and his ego.
Tämä on Maria Petrovnan rumpu. Maria Petrovna on yksi nanai-shamanka. Tapasin hänet talvella 1991. Hän kuoli helmikuussa 1992. Ennen kuolemaansa hän oli noin viikon venäläisessä sairaalassa. Kerrotaan, että hän ei halunnut kuolla. Hänellä oli rumpu mukanaan ja hän rummutti siellä noin viikon, kunnes tuntia ennen kuolemaa rumpu kirposi kädestä. Sanotaan myös, että hän oli niin voimakas shamaani, että hän vei mukanaan 2 veneellistä miehiä. He hukkuivat Amuriin. Yksi heistä oli minun kalat-kaverini toukokuussa 1992. Tässä Maria Petrovnan rummussa on säkki, jossa hän rumpua säilyttää. Sitten siinä on vasara, jolla hän rummutti viimeiset rummutuksensa. Sitten tässä on mielenkiintoinen sarja pieniä pusseja. Nämä pussit ovat kuolleiden lasten henkiä, omia nanain kielellä. Kerrotaan, että nämä omiat ovat elämänpuun latvoilla ja visertävät siellä kuin pienet linnut. Kysymys on osa nanai-kosmologiaa. Elämänpuu, jonka oksilla laulavat pienet linnut kastamattomien, tai sanoisinko nimettömien lasten sielut. Eihän nanaita kasteta, he olivat esikristillinen uskonto, eikä siellä kristinuskoakaan paljon tunneta. Mielenkiintoista kuitenkin oli nähdä, että Maria Petrovnan seinällä oli myös ikoni. Se oli hänen mieheltään, joka oli liettualainen, joka minulle tämän rummun antoi miehelle Leningradin takaa.
Although death in its different forms is ever present in man's everyday life, its mystery consumes his soul.
Mitä kuolemassa tapahtuu? Kerrotaan, että kungfutsen oppilaat kysyivät kerran mestariltaan, että mitä kuolema on, niin kungfutse sanoi, että miksi te kysytte kuolemasta, kun ei ymmärrä elämääkään. Eri uskontojen käsitykset ovat tässä hyvin erilaisia. Jos ajatellaan vaikkapa buddhalaisuuden oppia nirvaanasta, se on sammumista kuin kynttilän liekki sammuu, niin sammuu ihmisen elämä, kun ei ole enää sitä liekkiä, joka pitäisi ihmisen elämässä. Voisi ajatella myös sen, että jos kristityn, muslimin, juutalaisen pyrkimyksenä voisi olla sielun kuolemattomuus, niin hindulaisuudessa, buddhalaisuudessa pyrkimyksenä on se, että sielu häipyisi pois tästä kiroutusta kierrosta. Kristillinen näkemys opettaa uskoa sielun kuolemattomuuteen, mutta myös sitä, että kysymys on ruumiin ylösnousemuksesta. Mutta voisi myös sanoa sen, että ei Jeesuskaan opetuslapsilleen antanut kovin yksityiskohtaista selitystä siitä, mitä tapahtuu kuoleman jälkeen, vaikka sitä häneltä monta kertaa kysyttiin. Enemmän asioita tulee esille sitten kirjeissä, mutta ehkäpä juuri tuo ajatus, että me olemme viimeinen sukupolvi, joka ehkä ei kuolemaan näe, oli sen verran olennainen kristittyjen ensimmäiselle sukupolvelle, että he odottivat, että he kuolevat yhdessä ja se merkitsee sitten uutta maailmaa ja uuden maailman tuloa.
In today's organized society, death is an institution which we keep well away from our everyday lives. Our mind, caught up in the web of the intellect, sees death as the antithesis of life and pushes the thought of it as far into the future as possible, in the hope of being able to face the end of life, when the time comes, with serenity and dignity. Kalervo Nissilä, a Finnish hospital chaplain, has seen death from every angle during the many years that he's accompanied people to their last frontier. He has repeatedly observed that in their final hour, people who have let themselves be lulled by their own omnipotence experience emotions they had no idea existed, including rage in the face of their helplessness. Those who have managed to return from the threshold of death often have strange stories to tell. While clinically dead, people may observe their own bodies and medical treatment given them so accurately that their doctors are amazed. In this spirit form, they go to see their friends and relations, and may even do them some useful service. After such an experience, people see the meaning of their earthly journey in a totally new light.
Ihminen ei ole maapallon vakinainen asukas. Me elämme täällä 70, korkeintaan 80 vuotta, ja sen jälkeen meidän maalliset jäännöksemme haudataan tänne hautausmaalle. Itse meidän olemuksemme, henkinen minämme, lähtee tielle kohti alkuperäänsä, luojaansa, taivaalle. Jälleen syntymästä on monenlaisia mielteitä ja ajatuksia. Urantia-kirja kertoo, että synnymme uuteen kehoon, ensimmäiseen mansiomaailmaan aikakauden päättyessä ja jotkut jopa 3. päivänä kuolemastaan. Tämä jälleen syntymien ketjun tarkoitus on kehittää ihmistä puhtaaksi hengeksi, kykeneväksi nousemaan puhtaana henkenä henkien maailmaan lähelle luojaansa.
The world's major religions offer narrow and conflicting explanations of death and reincarnation.